So we do have these awesome little bubbles that are going to get us inspired today. And just want to go over some of the materials that I have on hand. I do have a watercolor, kind of like medium liner brush. It's about a 1/4 inch. It's supposed to be a flat brush. I have a pencil. I have a white Sharpie oil marker or some white acrylic paint handy. I do have some, you can use colored pencils or gel pens to have help us along. And I have a nice liner brush that's good for like lettering. So it's a little bit extra long, if you can see, thin and easy to help us create some circles. I have a Sharpie too to kind of outline the colors, but mostly you want to pull out a watercolor palette, of course, some water. And then I have some shapes here that will help us create some circles. So a little hack, a little cheat sheet. We have a circle that's large here for this paper plastic cup. I have a smaller circle. I have some coins that'll be easy to trace. So definitely different sizes of those. And then with all of this, we're going to create these awesome bubbles. So I'm going to use these bubbles as an inspiration. You can use just colored pencils, markers, crayons to help do this. And we'll get started with the tutorial. So it's just going to be a sketch and then we'll start layering some stuff in here. And to start off, I have, of course, you can use like a compass to help you create a circle. You can try to freehand some circles, but I'm just going to go the easy route, find something that I can trace nearby, and then just start creating a picture. So to start off with, my inspiration starts off, you want to try to take up space with the larger circles. So I'm just going to take my pencil and start sketching around. And when I trace, I'm not trying to trace where the axis is like touching the pencil here. I'm just coming around and then putting the pencil as close to the edge as possible to create the circle. Sometimes people try to hold it straight perpendicular to trace, but if you kind of bend your hand and go around, it's a little easier. And I'm just going to alternate the size of the bubbles and kind of just slightly overlap too. So again, I'm just curling my hand around and creating another bubble. I'm going to come off the page a little here at the bottom and do a semicircle. And really, you can go crazy with how your design is. You definitely want to try to keep them huddled next to each other and do maybe some overlapping as well. You can alternate the sizes by flipping your cup upside down. So I'm going to do a larger one here, just sneak around like so. And of course, if any circle doesn't look straight, that's what the eraser's for. Just come in, do a quick little edit and a flipperoo to create the big and large size circles. And you can use literally anything to trace. You can use the lids of your cups if you have Stanleys. You can use regular drinking water cup. You can, like I said, use a compass. And then I'm going to come in to some smaller areas with some smaller circles. And I just like tracing the circles or using the compass for the circles, only because it gives a more exact shape. And there's no rules in art. If you use a technique to create a picture, like say tracing a circle, that's just called part of your process. So this is part of my process. Again, just using different size shapes, kind of huddling things around and figuring out what looks good where. I'm just using a nickel right now to trace. And maybe this nickel has a little best friend. You can really try to have your composition kind of huddling things in pairs or in threes, just to give it a more designed look. And again, if your circle's not perfect, that's quite all right. Use your eraser to edit. Just play around with the idea of letting the bubbles kind of touch and overlap. Freehand some baby ones. Almost like layered like a snowman. So just a little bit of an up close of the sizes and styles. And I'm just going to keep going till my little heart says this is finished. I'm not layering too much over it, but I am being a little selective, and then even just adding some, using a quarter now, just some off the page curves to really make it pop. Coming around with a quarter, maybe creating a little pair here with a nickel. And slightly layering here. And then I feel like just maybe a couple smaller ones in this area, and my picture is well filled in. And then get a bigger one. And it's really just to be creative, just to come around and fill in some more dots. A little bit smaller, almost the size like of an opening of a straw. And so all do half a circle up here. So all my page is filled up pretty well. We have some overlapping, some kind of just paired up in threes, or paired up with twos. Almost giving like a snowman effect. And you don't want to go too crazy with the layering. Just one or two should be good. So again, this is what we have going on. This is our inspiration. And to get started, we're going to use a watercolor brush to kind of lightly fill in the bubbles in different sections. But if you notice, there's a big white spot. So the way to achieve those big white areas, you can do it two ways. You can fill up the whole circle in watercolor and then take an oil pen like this one. It's an oil pen Sharpie that has oil paint in here. So very similar to Posca markers where you pump the ink out and draw like a regular marker. And then you have the option of layering the acrylic on top and creating that white that happens to give the illusion of a shine. Or you can use the sketching process and sketch out these kind of squarish curves. So you can see in our inspiration, while it gives the illusion of it being a piece of shininess on the bubble, it's just like a curved rectangle. And it kind of gets smaller as it gets towards the center on one side. And then even just like a parenthesis is used to create that shininess. So we're going to do the part where we're filling in the whole bubble and layering the color on top, but you can also come in and sketch it beforehand. Just as an example, we're just sketching a curved rectangle. And when we put our paint on, our watercolor paint, we're going to avoid this section and leave it white. So you can do that, or you can do the layering on top. Now we're just going to come into all of our bubbles and mark the areas where we'll see our shine. But again, you have the choice when we start to fill in the color of doing the whole watercolor circle, or you can layer with one white on top. So starting off with this first section, I have a curved rectangle here, and then I'm going to come in and create a little bit of a thicker curved rectangle. And the curve is going to be in the same curve as the circle. So if I have the circle here, I'm going to do the same kind of parallel curved line for these highlights that are happening. So I'm going to try to get it as close to the same curve as possible as I'm layering in these kind of rectangular pieces. And then we'll come into the other side and sketch. Now, this is basically the shape of a parenthesis, just like so. And then we'll do a little bit of a thicker curved square to create the shine. So you have a nice thick curved square. You have a bit of a rectangle off to the side, and then a little bit of an oval. And really, it's just going to repeat this same shapes on every bubble. So we have these curved squares, and then for the smaller, and these are going to be for all these big ones, and these smaller ones will get a different design. So we're just going to go to these larger ones, these medium and large ones, and create the same kind of look. Again, we're going to find this area, create the same curve as the circle. And just like so, filling in 3 on one side, and then coming over and getting a thinner parenthesis, and then a big block of shine. So a little bit larger, a little bit of oval. So it's very similar to the initial one that we did. This is going to be, like I said, our white highlight. And we'll just move through the other shapes the same way. We'll have a little bit of a square here. And notice how it's at the bottom left and the top right of the bubble. Just continuing those same type of squarish rectangular shapes on one side. And then it gets a little bit thinner on the other side first, then a little thicker rectangular area, just like so. And they're all going at the similar angle also. So you see this is kind of similar angle. This is kind of diagonal, 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 going the same direction. Now this smaller one's going to get 2 rectangular curves. So something a little smaller. This one's going to get 2 rectangular curves. Again, a parentheses style, a block chunky style. And a little shape on top. Now it can get confusing because we're layering the bubbles, but try your best to not get confused and try these chunky shapes on the bottom and the thinner and 2 chunky rectangles on the top. And we're just going to try our best to just keep going. We have a chunky block here, a little bit of a rectangle, and an oval. Some of these little ones here are only going to get ovals. So we'll come in here. They almost look like little olives. Just like that. And we'll just do a smaller repeat here. And just continue taking our time to fill in these bubble shapes. I'm going to come in with a thick square on this side. Just like so. And we're just creating big highlighted square here. Now the perks of, again, doing the acrylic on top is these pencil marks will kind of disappear underneath the oil and the acrylic. So again, this is the inspiration and this is the close-up. So a larger square here, a rounded bit, and then some parentheses, and a mix of those going in the same angle will give you that illusion of a shininess. And then just like that, you have some of these smaller ones with the top and bottom. You can keep them rounded or you can give them a squarish kind of roundedness. And there you have all of our highlighted sections. And so remember, if we're painting, we're going to, if we only have watercolors, we're going to kind of avoid those areas because those are going to stay white. And then we're going to get started mixing our colors. So I have some watercolors here. And the shades that we're going to do for the watercolors, we have really any shades you can do, even if you just have blue and white. I might have, oh, if I forgot to mention earlier, I needed a round brush as well. So I have a round brush in addition to this watercolor liner brush and this long lettering brush. So those are our three main brushes. So for this one, I have a cup of water near. I'm going to wet my brush, keep a paper towel handy. And as you can tell, the shades are kind of in the same areas all over. So you can kind of see where the blue is designated on the top left and the bottom right. Then you'll see a bit of pinkish purple and pinkish purple on the edges. And the center gives that yellowish green tinge. So all the colors are going to be similar. And we're going to be placing them in those same areas for every bubble. So to get started, you'll need, again, a bluish shade, a purplish shade, and a yellowish green shade. So to get started, I'm just going to keep a tester page nearby. So a lot of times it's good just to have like a little tester paper, just so you can see what shade works best for you. So I like that blue. I'm going to continue with that blue, and with my water, I'm dipping in, taking a couple of swipes of the watercolor and putting some on my palette. And I want it very watery. I want to be able to kind of have it almost see-through. So if you see, that's a lot of water, very see-through. And then I'm just going to take this round brush and just kind of fill in and stopping at the highlighted part. Not worrying too much about it. Just start to fill in my circle. Just like so, filling it in all the way around. And I'm going to do that for all of the circles, starting with that base color blue. So again, just kind of working my way around with this very see-through light blue. So it almost looks like you're barely putting anything on your bubbles. Couple more swipes of color and build up pigment. So now I have a lot of pigment. I'm going to water it down now. So I'm gonna see through and then just come in and put a nice light share throughout the whole, nice light layer throughout the whole bubble. Just like so. And working our way around. And again, I'm only painting over the highlighted areas because I have a marker that I can paint over and do mixed media. But you want to stay kind of away from those lighter areas best you can if you don't have anything to cover over it. And again, just coming in with this first layer of blue. You need more pigment, you can dip your brush in the water, put a couple swipes across, and water it down, just so it's almost giving a see-through look. And this is just mostly for the base. So anywhere that has a little bubble is going to get this little first layer of blue, just like so. Okay. So in addition to creating that first little layer color, you also wet the whole of the circle. So now you have a little moisture happening in the circle. So now when you add colors on top, it's going to help it bleed a little. And by bleeding, I mean any other color that you layer on top, it's going to give that ability to kind of blend well because you're starting off with a wet base layer. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of a turquoisey, darker blue. So a couple little swipes. It's almost got a little greenish tinge to it. And that's with this medium 1/4 inch flat watercolor brush. So if you can see on the tester page, it's like a darker shade of the blue that we put on, but just a little bit more green. And then we're going to concentrate putting those colors and following the curve and using the tip of the brush. So the curve, we're almost drawing like parentheses, and we're just introducing that turquoisey color. I'm gonna wet my brush and grab more pigment. So you see the top is very watery and shiny. I'm gonna bring that extra color here. And now just taking that and doing these curve lines and seeing how it's kind of spreading and bleeding. We want that effect. Now, I'm not going to take it all the way to the center. I'm just going to concentrate it on the top left and the bottom right. So again, top left and bottom right for all the bubbles. Top left, bring it towards the center a little bit, but not all the way. And just keep on with that curve kind of parenthesis, following the curve of the circle. And then I just have some pigment there. I don't want it too thick. I want to be able to layer it. So just adding a little water. And again, just following through the bottom right towards the center, bottom right, top left. Turquoisey blue, bottom right. Top left. And just working our way through. And the smaller the circle, the less effort you have to make. A little bit goes a long way. You can just get in that turquoisey shade. And those curves happening just like so. I'm just trying my best to follow the curve of the circle. And you're kind of taking these lines, putting one next to each other. And just trying your best to stay parallel to the curve of the circle. Swipe across the pigment. And just continuing throughout all these little bubbles. Just a little base layer of this blue shade. And then coming in with lines next to each other. Just like so. So just a little bit up close of what to start doing. It's looking pretty good so far. And we'll be on to the next shades. We're going to come in with a little bit of the purple. So once we have the first layer of blue down, and we come in with this comma style line next with this darker shade, I'm going to find a purple of my choosing, which I think I'm going to go with this kind of lilac-y purple. Do a couple swipes. Put a bit of pigment on my mixing palette here. Do a tester. I like that color. So I'm going to take a couple more drops of water just to thin it out. And then start working that color going on the top right and now bottom left. And again, just kind of taking some lines and following the curve of the brush and filling in the top left, excuse me, the top right and bottom left. Again, using the tip of this, following the curve of the bubble and almost bringing that turquoisey pigment down and completing the circle. Again, some of that purple, and I'm touching that blue we put in and completing our circle. So coming in at the bottom, whoops, coming in at the bottom, and swiping around to kind of complete that circle. And I'm just rubbing where the two colors meet just to blend it out a little. Come in again with some of that purple and try not to leave too harsh of a line. In between. And pull across this purple here, just need some more pigment. Throw that on my mixing palette, add a little water. I feel like it's too bright. And anytime you feel like you also make a mistake, if you have a paper towel handy, you can always take a little piece of paper towel and press and blot. So just a little bit of a close-up of how we're creating that top, right and bottom left. Kind of mixing, just coming in and connecting the circle around. Where the two colors meet, just kind of rubbing over, trying to create a transition shade. I'm just kind of going over that. Again, bottom, left and top right section. And just continuing. And really trying to follow the curve of the circle. So if the circle starts to curve, so does my brush stroke. I want to make it as round as possible so that when you're painting in, you're following that kind of circular motion of the circle to fill those sections in. You don't want to like paint top to bottom, left to right. You want to try to keep the brush stroke going around. And just like that, bottom left, top right, bottom left. A couple swipes across the palette, a couple more drops of water. Notice I don't bring it all the way to the center also. I'm kind of keeping it just around the edges, not completely to the center. Just a couple more little bubbles to go with this purplish, lilac-y pink color. Again, trying to follow the curve of the circle best I can. And bottom left, top right. And notice how when I add the colors, I'm just literally layering over. Just your best bet is to not overmix. So you don't want to concentrate too much on making sure the colors blend. Just want to fill in just like that. And then we'll have touch of this orangey color. So I have two like peachy, orangey colors. If you don't have that, you can just use regular orange, but very watered down. So I'm going to just take this peachy, orangey color and water it down. And this color is just going to be loosely introduced in between the top right highlights. So, you know, every bubble kind of gets the same treatment. This one's going to come right in here. You got that bit of orangey brightness kind of peeking in here. And that's the top right. A little highlight in between the circle. Just a little. Just some bubbles over here with the purple. So okay, just coming around. And just quickly throw in that bit of orange on the top right. Just like so. So that bit of orange happening on the top right. And a little bit on the bottom left. Just a little swipe of something. And then last but not least, the center gets a little bit of some yellowish green. I'm going to take our time. I'm going to clean my brush. Take some swipes. Do a little tester of the color green. Yeah, that's about the green that I want. And Water that down. I'm gonna try my brush. I'm gonna try to do a couple of swipes of some yellow too. I just want it a little bit more of a spring green. That works for me. I'm gonna do a little tester. Yes, I like that. So this was a little bit of that green and yellow. Some swipes. Make sure I have enough for all the bubbles. And a little water. And this is gonna kind of fall into here. This little section towards the center. It's gonna get filled in with this little bit of green. So the top right towards the center is getting that green treatment. Again, trying to follow the curve of the bubble. Couple of swipes of this green, a little touch of yellow. And just finish off. This last group. Again, trying to keep the curve of the circle. And just mixed a little blue inside the green just to finish off the bubble. So a little that green with blue just to finish off. And now we just find those little baby circles that have been lying around without any real reflection in some blue. And then it should look something like this, very messy, 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 piecey, and imperfect. So we'll be layering on top of this again with some white and layering with some marker. So we want to make sure that this dries really, 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 really well. So if that means stepping away and going to get a blow dryer and drying it off, or old school fanning it, just to let that watercolor kind of finish drying. Because you don't want to take, even though it is an oil pen, you don't want to take a wet marker and cover a wet area. So I'm going to start working on the bubbles that don't have too much wetness happening. And just finishing, missed this little baby one over here. So that's going to be last. I'm going to come in with my liner lettering brush, which is right here, comes with an extra long kind of bristle here. And I'm going to come into some of this white acrylic paint. So I'm going to water that down and make it very pliable. You can use water to make it easier. And when I'm pulling the paint across, I'm not really scooping. I'm just trying to like pull the paint and twist, pull the paint and twist so that my brush has a lot of pigment on there. And then what I want to get done is finding the driest bubble, usually these smaller ones, and start filling in those highlight sections. So I'm going to put my pinky on the paper on over a dry area, and I'm just going to concentrate and fill in over my drawn circle. And now's the time to even go over your drawn line and almost make it disappear. So whatever sketch line you have, you just want to go over it and clean up the area around and just make that area around the bubble really clean with the acrylic paint. So again, just I'm leaning my arm on my table, or you can use your pinky to stabilize your wrist. And just that drawn highlight gets filled in, and we clean up around the bubble. Right over the drawn pencil line. Swipe and twist across and just fill in that little highlight we penciled in right over the line. And I'm doing this on the smaller bubbles because they tend to dry more quickly. And I'm just taking my time lining the outside of the bubble with some white, using some water to thin it out so that it's easier to flow when I move it around, using my pinky to stabilize and come around over the pencil line to give it a nice clean edge and come in to fill the drawn highlight. So just to give you an up close look of what that's looking like, just like so. So once I have that little blob, I'm going to come in with some more lines in between just to really give that illusion of shine. And again, just try your best to stay in the same curve of the bubble. So your highlight curve is the same roundness of the drawn circle part. And just going and walking around. I say walking around, but just coming around and just really going around those bubbles, giving a little cover over the drawn line. And again, coming around and cleaning up that edge. Just like so. And around. And now fill in time. just like that. And just go over those sections and filling in that highlight. Again, just cleaning around. So, and highlight just like that. Just a little bit more of a close up. Slowly but surely working your way around with some white. Come in. It's a little thick. Gonna water that thick acrylic down. And clean the edge of the bubble. And filling in those highlighter sections with white. Covering over our drawn pencil lines. And just filling with white. And again, you want to make sure that your bubble is dry before you put your marker or your white acrylic over it. Otherwise, it will bleed and start to mix color, which isn't terrible. If that does happen, you just let it dry and then just go over it again. That is not ideal. Okay. Gonna pull some more acrylic. So basically, you'll just be filling in all these little highlighter areas with some white. I'm gonna move through this kind of quickly. And then last but not least, you can define the area a little bit more with a black Sharpie or some gel pens to add some lines and some interest and additional highlight and shine. And once I get this highlighted, I'll show you what I mean. Again, retracing the bubbles. Over the drawn lines that we created just to clean up the edge. That even goes for the layered ones. It gets a little white overhaul. And you can literally sit here and do this for hours, just constantly creating the bubbles and adding highlight. And just repeating it over and over in the same way, same colors. And just coming in. And just retracing the line that you drew and filling in those highlights that you drew with some white. Just repeat the same step for every little bubbly guy. So once all your little highlight sections are complete, you can come and reinforce the design with some cool markers, gel pens, some highlights here. And you can just easily come in using a blue gel pen, just coming in with just some lines, just outlining the edge wherever the majority of the blue area is, and just reinforcing that. Again, taking some white and almost filling in here, coming in with a Sharpie and just creating a more defined outlined area with a thin Sharpie. You can even take a gel pen or an oil marker and come in with just some highlights like that. Come into the purple area and then just again create another layer of interest there with the purple. And once you're complete, once you've gone over all the little sections, just defining them a little more, adding a little more interest. You can sign your masterpiece you created, especially with the over layered circles. Helps to define which one is on top when you have this little gel pen kind of outlines. And then of course I love to do the little baby ones, a little black overhaul, just to make them stand out a little bit more. And there you have, this was our inspiration, our nice shiny bubbles. This is what we accomplished today, our nice shiny bubbles. You can layer on the white. You can draw on some white like so. And then a signature. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you had fun creating this bubble mix media. And just a little bit of a close-up of what we have done. Again, you can sit here and play all day.